everyone. Good afternoon. Uh, Today's my topic is John Donne and the concept of death in poetry. Uh, these are my personal information. Is it table of contents and introduction? Why I choose these John Donne's concept of death in poetry? Uh, the concept of the poetry in death. John Donne also wrote about the Dead Be Not Proud poem. In this poem, he was include his personal experience, and it is a main concept of Dead Be Not Proud in poetry. Introduction. John Donne is widely regarded as one of the greatest poets of the English language, and his work is renowned for its complexity, wit, and intellectual depth. One of the central themes that permeate Donne's poetry is death, and he explores this complex and often dirty topic with remarkable insight, sensitivity, and no, Don's intellect in that was not simply a literary consist, but reflected his deeply held religious belief and his personal experience. Also, I talked about of loss and grief. As a young man, Don witnessed the death of his father, and later in life he experienced the deaths of his wife and several of his children. This experience undoubtedly left a profound impression on him and informed his poetic treatment of death. These situations also influence in his poetry that be not proud. In Don's poetry, death is represented in a multitude of ways as physical events, spiritual transformations, and an emotional response. His work is characterized by a profound awareness of the transist of human life and fascinations with the mystery of what lies beyond the death. About John Donne. John Donne, also known for metaphysical poet, and John Donne was born sometime between January 24 and June 1915 72, London, and died March 31, 1631, London. Was a leading English poet of the metaphysical school and dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, London, 1621 to 31. Donne is often considered the greatest love poet in the English language. He is also noted for his religious verse and treatise, and for his sermon, which rank among the best of the 17th century. John Donne's previous life, first he wrote love poems. After his wife's death, he wrote a poem about the death. John Donne, man of flesh and spirit. John Donne is best known as a poet of life, brilliantly able to recreate a man's experience of emotions and realities. But he is also a poet of the spiritual journeys. His religious poems speak of shame, fear, and self-conscious complexity and doubt. But his sermons can soar into a word music said equaled, or can condense theology into epigrams as witty as those which date from his youthful lusts. David Edward has written an extremely readable book which ranges over all Donne's poetry and prose and relates the literature to what is known or probable about his life. He takes a 20th century research and criticism into careful account but aim to provide more than a detailed examination of a limited part of the subject. He is not sentimental about Donne's fault and limitations, and he does not try to sound superior to either the poet or the pictures. Donne's personal experience of death and grief. John Donne's poetry is infused with a deep sense of loss and grief, which reflect his personal experience of bereavement. Dunn's experienced the death of several family members, included his father, brother, and several of his children. He also suffered the loss of his wife and more in 1617, an event that had a profound impact on his life and work. Donne's personal experience of death and grief thus shaped his poetic treatment of mortality, influencing both the emotional tone of his work and his philosophical and religious idea about the death. By examination the bio- biographical detail of Don's life and the ways in which he incorporated his personal experience into his poetry, we can gain a deeper understanding of the profound and enduring themes that underpin his work. So it is his personal experience of death, because he also personal experience include his poetry, Death Be Not Proud. Don'ts use a metaphor and imagery to convey the concept of death. He also called it a metaphysical poet. So, one of the defining features of John Donne's poetry is his use of vivid and often starting metaphor and imagery to convey complex idea and emotions. In his explorations of the concept of the death, Duns drawn on a wide range of metaphorical and symbolic language to capture the many facts of this profound and mysterious phenomenon. Continue. One of the most common metaphor used by John to describe death is that of sleep. In Death Be Not Proud, for example, Don refer to the death as the slave to fate, chance, king, and desperate man, before declaring that it is not really an at all, but rather a kind of sleep. Throughout his poetry, Donne also used a wide range of other metaphorical and symbolic language to capture the manifest facts of death, from the image of a winding sheet to describe a corpse, to the metaphor of a short sleep to suggest the fleeting nature of earthly life. By drawing on such a rich and varied pattern of language, Donne is able to convey the full range of emotions and ideas associated with death, from the sober and mournful to the hopeful and transcendent. Comparison with other literary works on death and mourning. John Donne's poetry on death and mourning is a part of the rich tradition of literary works that explore these themes. Comparing and contrasting Donne's poetry with other literary works can offer insights into the distinctive qualities of his writing and the ways in which he engages with the broader cultures and literary context of his time. Comparisons can be made with other culture and historical context in which death and mourning were prominent themes. For example, Donne's poetry can be compared with the works of earlier poets such as Shakespeare and Spencer to explore how their idea about death and mourning were shaped by the culture and religious context of the Renaissance. Similarly, Donne's poetry can be compared with the writings of contemporary theologians and philosophers such as Thomas Brown and Francis Bacon to consider how their ideas about death and the afterlife influenced his own thinking. By situating Donne's poetry on death and mourning within these uh, broader literary and culture context, we can gain a deeper appreciation of the distinctive qualities of his writing and the ways in which he engaged with the profound religious and philosophical questions of his time. Conclusion. In conclusion, Thornton's poetry on that represent a remarkable contribution to the English literature tradition, and his legacy continues to be felt in the work of contemporary poets. By engaging with the concept of death in such a profound and meaningful way, Don has helped to shape our understanding of what it means to be a human, and his poetry remains an enduring testament to the power of language and art to explore the most profound and universal aspect of the human experience. John Donne's poetry on death continues to resonate with the readers today, more than four centuries after it was written. His explorations of the physical, emotion, and spiritual uh, dimensions of death, as well as his innovative use of language and imagery, has had a profound impact on the development of English poetry. And these are my references, and thank you. If you have any question, please ask me.
So my question for you, Nikita, how did John Donne's personal experience influence his poetry?
Thornton's personal experience influenced his poetry in his life, family members' death, and his most important person in his life, his wife death, influenced his poetry. Anybody? My question is for you. What can be gained by examining Don's life and poetry? We can gain by examining Don's life. Don's life influence in his poetry, theme of the loss, uh, and most important is mortality. It is we can gain this topic. Thank you.